In Chapter 3 in O'Hara, he talks about structural failure in organizations, where built-in defects set things on a disastrous course. Failed structures account for a major portion of organizational pathologies. Managers and employees, others, who can diagnose and fix structural failures early will likely head off many a disaster. Let's get a basic definition of organization on the table before we go forward. Read the definition. There's lots of keywords here, such as deliberate arrangement. The members of a riding mob may divide up mayhem chores on the fly. You guys turn over the car, we'll get the rocks. But that doesn't make the mob an organization. An organization is consciously structured so that various parts work together to produce a specific result. The structuring authority in government can include mayors, governors, presidents, or the legislature. CEOs and boards of directors shape corporate structures and with varying degrees of conscientiousness and success. Watch to see if the structures degrade. The last three bullets in the slide echo Henry Mintzberg's conceptualization of major elements of organization. The operating core carries out the primary functions of the organization. Police officers are the operating core of your local police department. Teachers are the operating core in schools. The operating core in hospitals consists of doctors and nurses. Staff units exist to help the operating core. If I'm an academic department chair during a faculty search, I'm responsible for processing and assessing applicants in a non-discriminatory way. Well, there is an EEO specialist in the Human Resources Department who might help me with that. Also, colleges, indeed, almost all organizations deal with all of those computers, all the data, all those internet connections. Mintzberg applies the term technostructure to organizational elements that manage these services that are critical to operating core's effectiveness. Mintzberg's strategic apex is home to the CEO or Alright, I kind of lost my way. I got distracted by something. Where was I? Mintzberg applies the term technostructure to organizational elements that manage these services that are critical to the operating core's effectiveness. His strategic apex is home to the CEO or commissioner or executive director or college president. They set the policy course and try to secure the resources with which to pursue. Homeland Security. All federal law enforcement or only certain departments? Google. The structures are relevant. After all, they're chasing the dollar. Founder Larry Page now back in charge and explicitly seeking to cut the fat. As he stated, we don't even know who's doing what. Corporate battles also determine structure. Co-presidents of Lehman Brothers in the 1980s. Rapid diminishment of Michael Ovitz as president of Disney in the 90s. All illusory organizational charts. At colleges with big-time athletics, the coach and athletic director may be more powerful than the president, though you will never see that on the org chart. When the president of Penn State asked football coach Joe Paterno to step down in 2004, Paterno said no, and that was that. When Paterno was in 2011 amidst a breaking child abuse scandal involving a former assistant, that same president also got the boot. A TV commentator remarking on why she thought the Penn State buck stopped with Paterno in terms of alerting authorities to allegations of child abuse at campus athletic facilities, made an astute observation, underscoring how organization charts may tell us little about day-to-day operational reality. Quote, "Who did Paterno report to?" she asked. "No one," she answered herself. Michael Milliken, at Drexel Burnham. Not that long-standing clear-cut structure is necessarily healthy either. J. Edgar Hoover's half-century reign at the FBI, the strong tenure protection LAPD chiefs once enjoyed, also harmed those agencies in the end. Paterno's extra 7 years, from 38 to 45 years of total leadership, culminated in total ignominy for him for Penn State. Internal battles at Lehman, long reign, calcification, real time, wacky authority such as Disney, Citigroup, J.P. Diamond, J.P. Morgan Chase, canned in favor of Weil's daughter. The move crisis, communications, perverse incentives. Well, okay, you're getting the point. Let's move on. So a key step in operating effectively in any organization is to look at it realistically. If you do this, you'll realize that things are under construction. You'll expect abrupt policy and personnel changes with new bosses. The new leaders' marching orders may call for such changes, but other new bosses don't have to hold a thing to clean house. Whether changes are made only to put new leadership stamp on things or to carry out mandated change, leadership transitions royal organizations. By the way, quote, just putting my stamp on things is vintage organizational politics. Turnover also transforms organizations. Institutional memory departs. Vacated positions may be eliminated or merged. A big learning curve faces those taking over function, and those who previously performed the function may no longer be around or resist giving the replacement help. Frequent changes in staff or operating systems will leave things unaccounted for, which in turn creates unexpected consequences. Through all of this, organizational units and professional cadres maneuver for advantage, as they always have, and this too may help reshape the organization. Strong hand needed, you say? Well, many organizational leaders see themselves as short-termers and see their bread as buttered by upping profits in the short run. Return on investment and other metrics that bring them big bonuses. Why get involved in messy, time-consuming internal battles that aren't threatening the gravy train? So in the end, it is usually strong external demands to reform that really compel structural change, and it usually takes a major crisis to engage these external forces. Organizations that avoid this kind of intervention usually have leaders who holistically view the organization and its environment, focus on the longer-term future of the organization, and have the policy flexibility to position the organization and its members accordingly. If you look at organizations with X-ray eyes, which hopefully this part of the course will enable you to do, you will see all these fault lines. Organizations equal hierarchy, layers of authority. Layers at odds for reasons that can be unrelated to organizational goals. For any number of reasons, or none at all, workers as a group can develop and act upon their low opinion of, quote, management. Management is also capable of returning the favor with or without provocation. Unprovoked animosities don't mean the absence of organizational policy issues, which are always in evidence. But sometimes a view with your X-ray glasses will show that the policy positions have been adopted as weapons of convenience in personal and interprofessional conflicts already well underway. The Move case, which we will discuss at length in class. Just saying. And the JonBenét Ramsey cases feature hierarchical dysfunction rooted in personal animosity or general disrespect for agency leadership. In addition to hierarchy, organizations also establish functional areas, divisions, units, programs that are designed to coordinate but are subject to centrifugal tendencies. Like that? Centrifugal force? Yeah, neat. Anyway, that can sabotage coordination and in some cases literally tear the organization apart. Each of the three major cases in this chapter in O'Hara display inter-unit pathologies that seriously compromised mission success. Gaps in organizational capacity can also cause failure, particularly if organizations are in denial about their limitations. Boulder didn't have the wherewithal to investigate high-profile, complex homicides. The Immigration Service was buried in work in the run-up to 9/11. Plans, the saying more or less goes, work fine until you have to implement them. But the move incident is a case in point. Finally, you have what's called the principal agent dilemma, which is, how do taxpayers, legislatures, contributors, stockholders, lenders ensure that their interests remain front and center as their organization is run by their chosen executives? In the gap between boards and CEOs, all sorts of things can go wrong. On these individual cases, we'd like you to offer your own analysis on your responses to the questions that we will discuss in class, or on the next 2 slides, which is a hint at what some of the things we'll be doing. The big facts are the large bullets, but the who, what, and why is represented by the smaller bullets requires some thought on how the big facts get established. While there are certain parallels in the welcome wagon case that's mentioned in the book, there are present parallels worth mentioning. Your book talks about the INS before 9/11, but immigration policy today, with more to enforce than available resources can handle, is in just as critical a condition. So what do? Relax the rules? In today's immigration policy debates, amnesty is a rule-relaxing option on the table. Or do you enforce the rules to the letter? In today's immigration policy debates, that means filling and the overfilling immigrant detention centers. Your book also talks about the conflict mandates between immigration, tourism, and aviation policies. Today's immigration debates similarly pit immigration policies against business needs. What's an agency, for your purposes, the INS circa 2000, to do? Come up with a policy that gets the best balance of enforcement and facilitated entry for visa holders, or put a finger to the wind and try and figure out operating policies based on where the political winds were blowing. Also, the INS case, we have agencies that must work with each other every day, both on an operational level and in terms of meshing the policies of the respective agencies. It is not rare then or now for co-equal and codependent agencies to find themselves in a policy bind over reconciling what partner agencies expect and the agencies itself is inclined to do. So what do? Tell your codependent partners to wait until your agency figures it out? Or do you work towards a deal? It's like some kind of MOA that defines the respective agency departments from too aggressive on an enforcement stance and may even be encouraged. Wait a second. Hold on a second. I got ahead of myself. So you work out a deal, some kind of memorandum of agreement, an MOA that defines the respective agency roles. Finally, that was actually a question. That defines the respective agency roles? ? Finally, in this chapter about law enforcement being a junior partner in an agency where law enforcement is only an adjunct to the main mission. For instance, college executives may rein in campus police departments from too aggressive an enforcement stance. It may even encourage them to fudge campus crime statistics to reassure students and parents that State U is an island of safety. So what do you do, Mr. or Mrs. College Police Chief? Fight back? Snitch? There's a federal law requiring honest reporting of campus crime. Or do you just go along? Think through this question in terms of the situation prior to 9/11, when law enforcement was downplayed by federal agencies managing the systems that terrorists exploited. And the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey had not fully addressed its police department's concerns over security vulnerabilities that remained in the wake of the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Fault lines are all over the place. The first fault line between political leadership and the agency leadership. Now elected leaders are certainly the principals when it comes to what's done by agencies under them. On the other hand, agency heads are professionals put in place for their expertise. The question under the first bullet asks you to consider whether the police commissioner, in this case, ought to have cautioned the mayor about moving too fast. Within the police department, planning for the move assault was amateurish as a result of the tight time frame and the personnel assigned to the task. But police commanders signed off at a meeting where the plan was presented and hardly anyone said a word. Would you have silently saluted this plan as a commander whose unit should have helped draw up the plan but was not included? Interagency communication, in this case, not only amplified the tragedy but also was the basis for years of finger-pointing between the commissioners involved. It's proved impossible to fix blame for this miscommunication, in part because everyone seemed satisfied with messages that were hastily delivered, carelessly or evasively phrased, and literally phoned in. Finally, in this case, we have what amounts to an implementation disaster. Plan A fails big time. Plan B, invented on the spot, fails even worse. What lessons for managing critical incidents in real time can you draw here?